think we have today, as opposed to the 70s, where you could walk into a music store, if you were lucky, they had one fuzz pedal. But today, you have a wide selection of fuzz pedals, just to name one group of pedals, if we're talking that. And that puts a new problem, because which pedal, which fuzz should I use for the kind of sounds I want? And of course there are lots of great ones. There are upsetting ones to the elder generation like me, and there are more contemporary ones and sounds that we can remember, or whatever you heard on records. So anyway, that is the very long explanation of why make a new fuzz pedal today. I'm actually not just going to show one, but two. If we would take the fuzz sounds and divide them into two groups like this, we take the nice, well, sort of nice, and then we take all the ugly ones and put those in another bin. So we have two bins of sounds. Back in the day, when I played my first electric guitar, when I got that, I got as I could choose, do you want the guitar or the amp? So I took the guitar. But I took revenge. I rebuilt my mother's radio into an amp. And I soon understood that there was this switch on the backside where it had batteries, and it's an AC/DC switch. Okay. In the AC switch, it had which is so boring. But then, as batteries got older, which was much more fun suddenly. And then when they got really old, supposed to not sitting down like that, but waving to the audience like that. As soon as you hear that sound, you realize there's going to be some electric guitar. An amp sounds the best just before it dies. Now everybody knows this is the truth. We've seen it. Specifically in Finland, we've seen this with the Eppo normally, and you look at one of the amps and it's going to die. But it sounds great. With that, one could say, what happens when an amplifier nearly dies? Well, it starts to distort, and you get this rich sound. And you get a specific playability that compresses notes to give a longer sustain. And this is how you can, as I just showed you with this, now, anybody who is familiar with the electric guitar would know, or with the guitar as such, would know that the guitar is a percussive instrument. You strum the strings and you get a peak like that, and then it dies. Not so with a fuzz pedal. You can almost get the sound of an organ where you push a note, it just rises and it stays there. That's the typical sound of an organ. Specifically with this fuzz pedal is, I was thinking about the so-called good sounds on that side. Not that everybody has to like it, but so-called good sounds. And we can also show that with a bit less gain, music consists of sound, silence, and noise. These are you can't have music without having these. So there's no removing noise. We have to have some noise, and we also have to have some silence, because if you don't have any silence, it quickly gets boring. And then we have the remaining part where we can actually make a note. One, like we could think, we could do. And then we could hope that was the greatest note we ever played, if we only have a few seconds to do something. I'll tell you something interesting about the playability of this sound. You have to experience the value of a note. Playability is a fun thing, because when you change the texture of notes, and you give, for instance, each string an equal note value, so that it will have equal volume, equal sustain qualities, then suddenly you get new ideas what to play. Because there are some things you can't do without sustain. Once you got sustain, you got something happening. In order to get this type of sound, either you had a fuzz pedal, and a damn good one, or you crank the amp. Now when you crank an amp, you get this response that you can stretch it back and forth. And even so, you get every note out at the same level and you're heard. This is the kind of playability I want to build into this fuzz, so that you will get the feeling of playing a very, very loud sound. Only this isn't loud. That's the interesting thing. It's quite okay to have a great sound on stage at the club in front of 10,000 people. For the most part, about 90% of the time actually playing guitar, and I'm not saying carrying gear up dark alleys, up and down stairs and whatnot, and driving cars in the middle of the night. I'm actually talking about getting better at playing guitar and actually playing. This is something that has a tendency of only do at times of the day or night where you're not allowed to play at the same stage levels or even rehearsal levels that can be louder. Now, if we think about it, if we could get the same playability at 4 in the morning that we could at a stage with boarding amps, that would actually mean that it could be easier to practice. It could be less hard to practice. So having a great sound can increase the ability to play guitar. This is why sound is so immensely important because it also feeds the mind. But it's also like this. When you get a truly loud guitar sound, it may feed back on you. But then you can learn how to control this in your own way. And also, here's a cheap trick. If you're recording in the middle of the night, and I know that happens, okay, and you cannot amplify anything, what one can do then is one can run a fuzz pedal through a transistor radio that you will place approximately this far from the strings, so that the sound from the speakers vibrates the strings. And actually, when you record this, when you listen back to it, you will not hear the sound that comes out of the radio, but you will hear how the speaker has made sort of an EBO effect on the strings, which is also something that you experience when you play loud. Now, because it is fun to play loud, we want to have the same kind of fun at any level. So this is why we can bring out a no fuzz. And also, speaking about fuzzes, back in the 60s, if you were a truly talented guitarist, you could get to go into the music store and you could select the good fuzz. And only the up-and-coming were allowed to do this, because the music store felt that, okay, if we get this thing out and records records and things, we can sell crates of them. Which they of course did. But it's just that the out of 100 fuzzes in a box, there were maybe 2 that sounded fine, and the other ones were just okay. Well, they're sort of out of BS and all that. But it sort of strengthened the idea of that there may be a little more between you and Jimmy Page than a fuzz tone pedal, as Tom Wheeler wrote in a book. I propose to say maybe some of these guys had better fuzz pedals. And I know that for a fact, because I actually had to play Chine Fuzz Wah Siren, and believe me, that wasn't happening. I don't think people put too much effort into making this dynamic range, because really the octave sound is anyway known to be only playable on the neck pickup and only in a small part of the fretboard. So therefore, as long as the kids are happy with that, okay, give them what they want. But I'm thinking, let's not do that. Let's do something that could be playable regardless, more or less, of instrument, and regardless of note played. Because if you could do that, you could suddenly make a new musical meaning. And that's where it all starts, isn't it? It starts with, you want to make music, and then you get sound that you make music with. And the sound tells you what to do, and it goes like that. Nobody upset?
No.
Okay. How about this now? quite horrible.
That's great.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is, if anybody noticed this, it's actually so that this sound has a true octave effect from the deepest bass, which makes it horrible to play an F chord. You can do that to upset people. Of course you could. But now, recognize this. I did say before, silence is a very important. It's very important, isn't it? But sometimes it just dies in the middle of that, which is more than annoying. But once you get used to it, you know how to vibrate the note, and you can get it to work, and then you can have the silence, as opposed to noise. We can have perfect octave and gate. Totally annoying. Because now we can have silence. And it suddenly doesn't sound like a guitar anymore, but like the cheapest of the 60s organs back in the day when the bassist couldn't afford a bass. So we had a tube-on instead. There was a tube with 1.5 octave manual like this, and it made similar sounds to this, only it made it deep in the bass. Which was okay for any band in the 60s to keep the pace, because the option would be that you get one of these metal upright basses that you could stack on the roof. It had to be metal, because if it was wood, it wouldn't survive. So there were special metal basses made for this, for those that could afford. Those that couldn't afford, they would have to pay the trombone. But today we can upset people with the trombone sounds again. Now, why give all of these? Well, this thing, it has a rotary switch.
What's the switch about?
Yes, we're getting to that now. Yes, so we're going to do that with German efficiency, right? Okay. Well, in the first setting, in the first setting, I wasn't German at all. Okay. Right, in the first setting, we have this sort of standard fuzz sound. Alright, but then we have this octave sound. And the interesting thing with this octave sound is that it actually does. Many octave effects are only useful when you're approximately above the 12th fret. so well, you can actually even do vibrato on it, which normally isn't that easy to do. So, but we still have noise, didn't we? We can remove that. And now it's silence. We have silence and we have a gated fuzz sound. Hear the sound. And it's silence. But now we got, 3 new models. Now you're wondering what the third one is. Very nice clean sound, isn't it? You think so?
Yeah.
This is my entry into the discussion of dumbbell sounding pedals. If you could have a sound that could be manipulated from a near clean sound to a quite heavy distorted sound just by the way it's attacked. The next question is, of course, how much distortion can we actually get, isn't it? Anybody wants to know?
Yep.
Yeah. First we got the drive sound here. And I'm thinking, well, we're actually not playing that low. We want to play it louder. Approximately here, I enough gain to play with slide, and you can, with this kind of setting, you can get a slide sound that you can get many notes out of one strike. And the important thing when you play slide, if you know how to play slide, you know that you want to minimize the number of notes you strike, because each note you strike it gives a pluck to the sound. So it's much more interesting if you can sort of get the sound. This is one of the keys of some very nice slide guitar players, like for instance David Lindley or Sonny Landreth, and who happen to play certain kind of amplifier. This thing has 4 controls. One is a drive that is at the far right, and then we have something called the body. Now what the body does, it sets the bottom. Then we get this control called the edge. You see, if we Here we can get the interesting thing is, when we turn this up, there's a point where the whole thing just transforms into square wave. And it's about here. Because you can hear from the interesting thing is, you can actually set this knob at such a point that you can control what is very soft to immensely screaming. Put this on. And suddenly, this is where you can change the sound to a more aggressive, where it starts to distort almost like a square wave. But you can have that in your hands, which means you can sort of most people would say that's a very clean guitar sound, isn't it? Here we got, again, the illusion of playing immensely loud, because that did sound like a very loud guitar, didn't it?